The night was quiet, too quiet. The fortress stood under a silver sky, its walls cold with the touch of the mountain winds. Torches burned along the gates, their flames flickering as if nervous, as if they too felt something strange in the air. The guards were restless. They had been trained for years, men hardened by war and silence. But on that night even they shifted uneasily. They spoke little, their eyes on the dark road that wound its way up the cliff. Nothing should have been out there. The path was empty, the valley silent, and yet they felt that something was coming. The first sound was soft, almost nothing at all, a whisper against stone. A step, another. Then the shape appeared, small, fragile, wrapped in cloth that shimmered like starlight. The guards froze. Their hands tightened on spears, but not one of them moved forward. The figure came closer. She was no taller than a child, her steps uneven, her breath faint. The torchlight fell across her face, and every soldier's blood ran cold. Her eyes, they were not human. They glowed faintly, a pale silver blue, as if the fragments of the night sky had been caught within them. She said nothing. She only looked at them, tired, broken, but filled with a strange kind of power. The captain at the gate tried to speak, but his words failed him. His throat closed. His lips trembled. He had seen blood, war, and death, but never this. One of the younger guards whispered, "What is she?" His voice cracked like glass. No one answered. The figure kept walking, past the torches, past the gates. The soldiers wanted to block her path, but their bodies would not obey. Their feet were heavy as stone. Their arms were weak as water. They could do nothing but watch. And then, as if guided by some invisible hand, she turned her glowing eyes toward the courtyard, toward me. I had been standing in the shadows, watching from behind the stone pillars. At first I thought she was a dream. She looked too fragile, too strange, like a vision that belonged to another world. But when she stepped closer, I felt her presence press against my chest, heavy and real. Her small hand reached out. She touched my arm, her fingers cold but steady. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her touch carried a silent message: I need shelter. I need you. The guards gasped. Some even stumbled back. To them, it looked as if she had chosen me. And in a way, she had. Out of everyone in that fortress, out of all the warriors and leaders, the alien princess had taken shelter at my side. I did not understand why. I was no king, no hero, only a soldier who had seen too many battles. But her hand clung to me as if I was the only safe place left in the world. The silence grew, heavier. Torches hissed, wind howled across the mountains. Every eye was on us, on her, on me. Finally, one of the guards found his voice. "Commander," he whispered, "what are your orders?" I looked down at her. She was trembling, but her eyes never left mine. For a moment, I felt as if I had been pulled into her soul, as if her fear and her hope had become my own. I turned back to the men. My voice was steady, though my heart thundered in my chest. "Let her stay." The words hung in the air like a blade. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared to argue. Their instincts screamed caution, but their bodies obeyed. The alien princess pressed closer against me, hiding her face in the folds of my cloak. I could feel her breathing, soft and quick, as if each breath was a battle she struggled to win. And then, just as I thought the silence would break, the ground trembled. A faint vibration, almost too soft to notice, but real. The torches flickered again, far away. Deep in the darkness of the valley, a red light flashed for a brief moment, then another, then more. The guards turned their heads, alarm in their eyes. Something was moving in the distance, something vast, something hunting. I tightened my grip on my sword. I did not know who she was or why she had come to me, but I knew this: she was running from something, and whatever that was, it had found her trail. The fortress that had once felt safe now seemed fragile. The air was heavy with fear, yet also with something greater. Destiny. No one spoke again that night. The only sound was the wind, the torches, and the faint, steady breath of the small alien princess who had chosen me as her shelter. And in that moment, I understood nothing would ever be the same again. The princess did not speak. She only clung tighter to me as the fortress guards stood frozen. their faces pale in the torchlight. None of them understood why their bodies refused to move against her, why their weapons trembled in their hands. It was as though some unseen force held them back, warning them not to cross her. I could feel her heartbeat through the thin cloth wrapped around her small frame. It raced like a bird caught in a storm. She was terrified, and yet she stood firm, hiding at my side as though I had been chosen long before this night. I wanted to ask her 100 questions, but her wide silver eyes told me that she carried no answers, only desperation. The captain stepped forward, his jaw tight, his hand resting uneasily on his sword. He looked at me, not her, as though afraid that even his gaze might offend her. "What is she doing here?" His voice shook despite the steel in his words. "She does not belong inside these walls." Before I could answer, the ground trembled again, this time stronger. Dust slipped from the stone archway above the gate, falling like sand from a broken hourglass. The red lights in the distance pulsed brighter, moving closer with every heartbeat. A low hum carried across the valley, unnatural, vibrating in the chest of every man on the wall. The alien child's hand gripped my arm tighter. I could feel a faint warmth spreading from her touch, pushing back against the cold night air. For the first time since she had arrived, I saw something flicker in her glowing eyes. Not only fear, something else. Trust. The captain raised his hand, ready to order the guards to push her out. But before the command left his lips, 3 soldiers dropped their spears. Their knees hit the stone as if the strength had been ripped from their bones. One of them gasped for breath, clutching his chest as if drowning on dry land. The princess said nothing, but her gaze shifted toward them. The moment she looked away, the men regained their strength. Their breathing steadied, their weapons no longer heavy in their hands. The captain froze mid-command, realizing what had just happened. He swallowed hard and turned his eyes back to me. "She stays," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Every man there understood that this decision was final. The princess leaned her head against my chest, shivering. I wrapped my cloak around her without thinking, shielding her from the cold winds that tore through the courtyard. The fabric swallowed her small frame, making her seem even smaller, even more fragile. And yet, I felt in my gut that she was anything but weak. The guards backed away, giving us distance. None of them spoke, but their eyes said everything. They were afraid, not only of her, but of what might be following her. Soldiers do not fear children. They fear the shadow that comes after them. The fortress bell rang again, louder this time. The hum in the distance had grown into a roar, a sound too strange to belong to any beast we knew. It was sharp, metallic, layered with echoes that made the skin crawl. The guards ran to the walls, peering into the darkness, their torches swaying. As they climbed, I stayed with her. She clung to me as if letting go meant certain death. My thoughts raced. Why had she chosen me? Why did her touch silence the strongest of warriors? What hunted her, and why did she bring it here to us? The night air carried the stench of burning metal. Sparks lit the horizon as something massive moved between the hills. Shapes flickered in and out of sight, dark, towering, impossible to measure. Whatever it was not human. It was not from this world. The princess closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she was slipping into sleep, but then I felt it. Images, faint and broken, pressing into my mind. I saw fire. I saw her world crumbling. Towers of silver glass falling into ash. I heard cries of thousands, silenced by a wave of burning light. I felt her fear, her loneliness, her desperate flight. Through the stars, and then silence. The vision ended as suddenly as it came. My chest rose and fell in heavy breaths, and I looked down to find her staring at me, her eyes shimmering with tears she did not shed. She had shown me her truth, not with words, but with something deeper. I understood then. She was not just a lost child. She was the last piece of a broken kingdom. She carried with her the weight of a world destroyed, and now she carried it into mine. The gates shook. Dust rained from above as the roar in the valley grew deafening. The guards cried out warnings, but their voices were swallowed by the sound. The enemy had arrived. The princess pressed her forehead against my chest, trembling as if she already knew what was coming. Her silent plea burned in my mind. "Protect me." I drew my sword. The The steel glinted under the torchlight, its edge steady. Even as my hand shook with the weight of what lay ahead, I looked at the men around me. Some were terrified, some defiant, but all of them turned their eyes toward me. The choice had been made the moment she touched my arm. Whether I wanted it or not, I had become her shelter, and now I would have to become her shield. The walls shook as the sound rolled over the valley, deep and sharp, like thunder made of iron. The guards rushed to the battlements, shouting orders, their boots pounding against stone. Torches swayed in the wind, their flames bending under. The force of something vast moving closer. I held the princess tight, her small frame pressed against me, her silver blue eyes fixed on the horizon. She did not blink, did not cry, but I could feel her fear through the trembling in her body. Whatever hunted her was no longer far. It was here. The captain shouted for the gates to be barred. Chains rattled, wood slammed, iron locks clicked into place. The fortress had stood against armies, beasts, even firestorms, but the fear in the men's eyes told me none of that mattered now. This was no enemy they understood. From the darkness of the valley, red lights began to rise. At first they looked like stars, but too low, too many, and moving in perfect lines. They pulsed in unison, beating like a heart. The hum grew sharper, louder, until the stone beneath our feet seemed to vibrate. The princess clutched my cloak and buried her face in it. My hand rested on her shoulder, but I could not comfort her. My own heart was hammering too hard, my breath too uneven. For the first time in years, I was afraid. Then the first shadow appeared, tall, jagged, black against the moonlight. It moved like a machine, but faster, more fluid. Its head glowed with the same red light we had seen in the distance. A single eye burning with a hunger that was not human. The guards gasped. Some raised their bows, their hands shaking. The captain barked for them to hold steady, but even his voice cracked under the weight of what loomed before us. The creature paused at the edge of the valley road, its gaze fixed on the fortress. And then, without a sound, more appeared behind. It, 2, 5, 10, an army of shadows, their glowing eyes cutting through the night. The princess lifted her head. Her eyes glimmered with tears, but her stare was steady. She whispered something, a sound so faint I almost thought it was the wind. None of the guards understood the words, but I did not need to. The meaning pressed into me like a weight. They had found her. One of the soldiers on the wall loosed an arrow. It flew true, striking the nearest shadow in the chest. For a moment, hope sparked, but then the arrow shattered on impact, scattering into sparks as though it had struck stone. The creature did not even flinch. The men cursed, fear breaking through their discipline. Some reached for more arrows, others backed away from the wall, their courage cracking like glass. The captain tried to rally them, but the truth was already clear. Our weapons could not harm them. The shadows began to move again, stepping in unison toward the fortress. The ground trembled with each step. The hum grew so loud it drowned out the shouts of the soldiers. Pressing against the skull like a scream that never ended, the princess clung tighter to me. And then, for the second time, I felt it, a surge of warmth spreading from her touch, filling my chest, reaching my veins. My vision blurred. In my mind, I saw again the ruins of her world. Towers of light shattering, ships falling like meteors. Those same shadows marching over fields of fire, their red eyes unblinking as they burned everything in their path. I staggered, gasping for breath, but the vision vanished as quickly as it came. She was showing me what they were, what they had done, and I understood. These creatures were no army of flesh and blood. They were hunters, made of something beyond metal, beyond life. They had destroyed her home, her people. Now they had crossed the stars to claim what was left. The gates shook as the first shadow struck. Iron groaned, wood splintered. The guards shouted in panic, pressing their weight against the bars. More blows followed, each one harder, each one cracking the defense of the fortress. The captain turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "What do we do?" His words were broken, torn from a throat filled with fear. I looked at the princess. She was only a child, small and fragile. And yet, when our eyes met, I saw something deeper. Her glow had grown brighter, her silver eyes fierce with determination. I knelt down, holding her shoulders. "What do you want me to do?" My words were soft, but urgent. She placed her tiny hand against my chest. The warmth spread again, stronger than before, filling me with a strange energy I could not explain. I felt my fear dim, replaced by a fire that was not mine. Her light was becoming mine. The gates cracked, splinters raining down. One more strike, and they would break. The guards braced themselves, but their courage was thin. The princess whispered again. This time I did not need to understand the words. The meaning was clear. Stand. Protect. I rose to my feet, drawing my sword. The steel gleamed under the torchlight, but now it seemed brighter, alive. The men around me straightened, their fear still there, but tempered by something else, hope. The gates thundered again, ready to shatter. The enemy was here, but so was she, and now, so was I, the fortress, the men, and the last princess of a broken world. All of it would stand or fall in the moments to come. The gates broke. Iron screamed as the bars split apart, wood exploded into splinters, and the massive doors swung inward. Dust filled the air, and through it stepped the first shadow. Its single red eye glowed like fire in the dark, its body, tall and jagged, shaped like a nightmare carved out of steel. The ground shook as it crossed the threshold, followed by others behind it. The guards fell back. Some raised their spears, but the moment they tried to move forward, their arms shook violently, as if their own bodies betrayed them. One dropped, his weapon entirely, his knees buckling beneath him. The fortress was filled with trained warriors, men who had stared down death many times. Yet in front of these creatures, their courage cracked like glass. The princess stood behind me, her small hand gripping the edge of my cloak. She did not cry, but her silence was heavier than any scream. I could feel her trembling, but I could also feel the strange warmth flowing into me, stronger now than before. It pulsed in my chest, in my veins, until my grip on my sword no longer shook. The captain barked orders, desperate to restore control, but no man obeyed. Their feet refused to move toward the enemy. Their voices failed. It was as if some unseen power wrapped chains around their will, holding them back. Even the strongest of them stood frozen, wide-eyed, helpless. The shadows advanced slowly, their steps heavy and precise. They did not rush. They did not roar. They moved with the cold certainty of hunters who already knew the prey could not escape. I felt the princess press against me, her forehead touching my arm. A vision flickered across my mind, me standing, sword raised, light blazing around us. It was not a command, not words, but a plea. She believed I could protect her. She believed I was the one. I stepped forward. My boots echoed on the stone, the sound louder than the thunder of the gates. The soldiers watched in silence as I moved toward the first shadow. My sword gleamed brighter, as though feeding on the strange fire within me. The creature lifted its head, the red glow narrowing as if recognizing me. It struck, faster than I thought possible. Its jagged arm slashed through the air. I raised my blade, bracing for the impact. When steel met shadow, sparks exploded, and the force nearly threw me back. But I did not fall. The warmth inside me surged, holding me firm. I pushed forward, shouting with a voice I did not know I had, and drove the blade deep into its chest. The men gasped. The impossible had happened. The sword did not shatter. The creature staggered. A scream of metal rang out as the red light in its eye flickered and dimmed. Then, with a final burst of sparks, the shadow collapsed, crashing to the stone floor. For a heartbeat, the fortress was silent. The guards stared in disbelief, their mouths open, their fear cracking under the weight of what they had just seen. I had done what none of them could. I had stood. The other shadows froze, their glowing eyes fixed on me, their steps slowed, their movements cautious now. They had expected no resistance, but resistance had come. The captain found his voice at last. "Stand with him," he roared, his fear breaking into fury. The soldiers looked at me, then at the princess standing behind me. Their bodies still trembled, but now there was a spark in their eyes. My strike had shown them the truth. They could fight. The second creature lunged. A spear met it mid-charge, hurled with all the strength of a soldier who had once been paralyzed with fear. The weapon struck its shoulder, and though it did not fall, it staggered. Others followed, blades flashing, arrows flying. The fortress had come alive again. The battle was chaos. The shadows were strong, too strong, their strikes like thunder, their bodies like stone. But now the guards no longer froze. They moved, fought, shouted. They followed me. Wherever I stood, they stood. Wherever I struck, they struck. The princess never moved from her place. She stood in the center of the storm, her glowing eyes watching, her hands clasped tightly together. The warmth she had given me burned stronger with every moment. I felt it spread outward, reaching the men around me. Their courage rose, their fear burned away. Still, the cost was heavy. Men fell, stone cracked, blood darkened the courtyard. The shadows pressed forward, endless, merciless. But every time one struck me, I rose again. Every time one tried to break the line, I drove it back. The soldiers began to shout my name, their voices loud enough to shake the night. It was not just a battle anymore. It was a stand. The princess closed her eyes, her face lifted toward the stars. Her glow brightened, and for the first time, I saw a faint shimmer of light radiating from her body. The shadows hesitated, their red eyes narrowing, their steps faltering. They feared her, or perhaps they feared what she had awakened in us. I stood in the middle of the courtyard, sword raised high, the men at my side, the child of another world behind me. For the first time, I felt the tide shift. We were no longer only defending, we were holding. And in that moment, as sparks flew and steel clashed with shadows, I knew the truth. She had not chosen me by chance. She had not come here by mistake. This was her test, my test, our test. The fortress would not fall tonight. The courtyard reeked of smoke and blood. Broken stone lay scattered where the shadows had struck, their bodies dissolving into black dust that hissed against the ground before vanishing completely. The soldiers leaned on their weapons, their faces pale, their armor dented and torn. Many had fallen, yet the line still held. But the battle was not over, not even close. The sky above us cracked open with a sound like tearing metal. Everyone lifted their heads at once. Clouds twisted unnaturally, spiraling into a vortex of fire and shadow. And then, through that rift, the ships appeared. They were not built like anything human hands could shape. Black arcs of steel glided across the heavens, sharp and silent, their undersides glowing with red veins that pulsed like living flesh. Each vessel moved with a terrible grace, as if the sky itself bent to their command. The soldiers froze again, their victory in the courtyard, already turning to ash in their hearts. If the creatures below had nearly destroyed us, what chance did we have against those above? The princess stood in the center of the courtyard, her small figure bathed in torchlight and shadows, her silver eyes lifted to the ships. I saw her lips part, a whisper leaving them, but no sound reached my ears. Instead, the world around me shifted. Images crashed into my mind, her world burning, towers collapsing under those same ships, her people scattering, hunted until none remained. She had seen this before. She had lived it, and now it had followed her here. The captain gripped my shoulder, his voice harsh with fear. "We cannot fight that. We must flee." His words trembled, not from cowardice but from the weight of truth. But when I looked at her, standing there so small and yet so unbroken, I knew there was no fleeing. Not anymore. The ships descended lower. Fire spilled from their bellies, red streaks cutting through the night. The ground shook as explosions lit the valley, tearing apart the earth. The sound was deafening, drowning out the shouts of men and the cries of the wounded. The fortress walls trembled under the storm, stones cracking as dust rained down from the towers. I pulled the princess close, shielding her with my cloak. Her small hand pressed against my chest, and once again the warmth surged through me. Stronger this time, fiercer. It filled my veins with fire, turning my fear into resolve. I could almost hear her voice in my head. "Stand. Protect." The soldiers rallied to my side, their eyes drawn not to the sky but to her. They saw what I saw, not a child, not a burden, a beacon, something greater than all of us. The first ship fired. A beam of red light slammed into the outer wall, tearing through. Stone like paper, the shockwave knocked men to the ground. Screams filled the air, but still, the fortress stood. The princess stepped out from behind me, her glow brighter now, spreading like a halo across the courtyard. Every eye followed her as she raised her tiny hands to the sky. She did not shout. She did not cry. But the very air seemed to answer her. A shimmer of light rippled outward, invisible at first, then blazing like silver fire. It wrapped around the fortress, a shield not of stone, but of something older, deeper. The next blast from the ships struck it and scattered harmlessly into sparks. The men gasped. The captain's jaw fell open. The child had stopped what no wall could endure. But it cost her. I saw her knees buckle, her breath shallow, her face pale. I caught her before she fell, her body trembling in my arms. She had given everything she could to protect us, and still the ships circled above, hunting, waiting. The soldiers looked at me now, their fear mixed with desperate hope. I felt the weight of their eyes, of her trust, of the storm above us. I tightened my grip on my sword and shouted into the night, my voice breaking against the roar of fire. We hold this ground. The words rang across the courtyard, carried by wind and flame. The men roared in answer. Their fear burned away by the echo of her light. They raised their weapons, not against an enemy they could see, but against the storm itself. The ships circled lower, their red eyes narrowing, their beams charging again. The shield around us flickered, weaker now, but still standing. She lay in my arms, her small hand gripping mine with the last of her strength. Her glow dimmed, but her gaze was steady. She was not afraid anymore, and because of her, neither was I. The next blast struck. The shield screamed, but did not shatter. The men cheered, voices rising above the storm. For the first time, I felt the enemy falter. Their advance was no longer certain. The battle had changed. The princess had brought them here, but she had also brought us something more powerful than any weapon they carried. She had given us courage. The sky burned, the ground shook, and the fortress groaned under the assault. But we did not fall, not tonight. The fortress burned, yet it did not break. Smoke curled into the night as the alien ships circled overhead, their red eyes glowing like embers against the stars. The shield of light shimmered faintly, trembling as if each heartbeat might be its last. The princess lay weak in my arms, her glow fading, but her will unbroken. The soldiers gathered around us. Their armor was scorched, their blades chipped, but their eyes no longer held only fear. They looked at her, then at me, and something new grew between us, a silent oath, unspoken but binding. If she would stand with us, then we would stand with her. The captain raised his sword, his voice raw from shouting. We fight for her, for this fortress, for all of us. His cry tore through the chaos like thunder. The men roared in answer, their voices shaking the walls more than any enemy strike. The ships began to descend, lowering closer to the fortress. Their shadows swallowed the courtyard, their beams charging with a red light so bright it painted the stones in blood. The ground shook as another wave of hunters poured from the broken gates, their jagged forms cutting through the dust, eyes glowing with that same merciless fire. The men braced, their shields locking, their spears steady. They no longer froze. Under the weight of the enemy's presence, they moved, fought, shouted as one. I placed the princess gently behind me, resting her against the stone wall. She lifted her head weakly, her silver eyes meeting mine, and I understood what she asked without words. Stand, protect. I stepped forward, sword in hand, and the soldiers followed. The first hunter charged, its arm swinging like a blade of iron. I met it head-on, my sword clashing against its strike. Sparks burst into the night, and for a moment, the weight of its power pressed me down. Then the warmth she had given me flared again, burning in my chest, flowing into my arm. With a cry, I drove my blade through the creature's core. Its red eye flickered, then burst into black dust. The men roared, their courage ignited. Arrows flew, spears struck, blades rang against jagged metal. Hunters fell, one by one, their forms breaking apart under the combined strength of men who had once been frozen in fear. Still, the enemy was endless. For every one that fell, another stepped forward. The courtyard became a storm of light and shadow, steel and fire. Screams and battle cries mixed together until they were one sound, a song of survival. Above us, the ships hovered closer. Their beams began to fall again, pounding against the shield. Each strike shook the ground, each impact dimming the silver light that surrounded us. The princess coughed, her small frame trembling, but she did not cry. She pressed her hands together, forcing the glow to return, even as it drained her strength. I fought harder. Every strike of my sword was not mine alone, it was hers. Her light burned through me, guiding my blade, steadying my steps. I felt no fear, only fire. The captain fought beside me, his sword dripping with black dust. He grinned through blood and sweat, his eyes blazing with fury. They bleed, by the stars. They bleed. The soldiers shouted his words, their voices echoing across the valley. Hunters fell back under the wave of human defiance, their red eyes narrowing, their steps hesitant for the first time. The largest of them stepped forward then, taller than the walls, its body black and jagged like a mountain of steel. Its eye burned brighter than the rest, a single red flame that pierced through the smoke. It raised its massive arms, striking the ground with a force that split the stone. Men stumbled. The shield flickered, and the fortress groaned as though ready to collapse. Silence fell for a heartbeat. The men looked at me. The princess's silver eyes locked on mine. The choice was mine to make. I stepped toward the giant. My sword gleamed brighter, the warmth inside me blazing like fire unleashed. The giant swung, its arm tearing through the air with the sound of thunder. I dodged, rolling across broken stone, and rose with a cry. My blade struck its leg, sparks flying. The wound was shallow, but the creature staggered. The men saw it stumble. Their roar rose again, and they charged. Spears struck its body, arrows rained down, and I leapt forward, driving my sword deep into its chest. The red flame in its eye burst like shattered glass, and the giant collapsed, crashing into the courtyard with the weight of a falling mountain. The ground shook, the fortress walls trembled, but we still stood. The hunters froze, their glowing eyes flickering as their leader fell. The ships above shifted, their lights dimming for the briefest moment. A sound rolled across the valley, not a roar, not thunder, but something new, uncertainty. The men cheered, their voices breaking the night. They raised their weapons high, their courage no longer borrowed but born anew. Humanity had stood, and the enemy had felt it. I turned to the princess. She was weak, her body slumped against the wall, but her eyes were alive with silver fire. She had seen what we had done. She had seen us rise, and in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. The smoke began to clear, drifting upward like the fading breath of the fortress itself. The courtyard was broken, scattered with shattered stone and the black dust of fallen hunters. The air stank of iron and ash. Men leaned against walls, clutching. Wounds, their armor dented and their faces pale, but their eyes were alive. They had seen something they never believed possible. The giant shadow lay crumbled where it had fallen, its red flame extinguished. Around it, silence stretched wide, broken only by the crackle of dying torches. The hunters that remained no longer advanced. Their glowing eyes flickered uncertainly, scanning us, scanning her. They seemed to hesitate, and for the first time, since the night began, I felt it fear, not ours, theirs. The ships above slowed their assault, their beams dimmed, their movements cautious, as though they'd felt the shift in the balance. They circled like predators, but predators that had tasted something unexpected, resistance. I turned to the princess. She sat slumped against the stone, her tiny frame trembling, her glow faint but still alive. When our eyes met, I felt the warmth again, weak yet steady. She had given everything she could, and still she endured. I knelt beside her. "You're safe," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it was true. The enemy was not gone. They hovered above us, waiting, watching, but for this moment, we still stood. And she was still here. That was enough. The captain limped forward, his sword dragging against the ground. His face was streaked with blood and dirt, but his voice rang strong. "We live. Against the impossible, we live." The men cheered, though their throats were raw, their bodies broken. It was not the cheer of victory, but of survival, a sound that told the universe we had not fallen. The hunters slowly retreated, their jagged forms slipping back through the broken gates, their glowing eyes dimming into the night. One by one, they vanished into the valley, their silence more unsettling than their roars. The ships above turned, their red lights fading as they rose higher into the torn sky. They did not strike again. They withdrew, but not in defeat. It was a pause, a promise. I held the princess as the men tended to. The wounded, she rested her head against my chest, her breath shallow but calm. For a moment, the fortress was still. The night that had begun in fear ended in fragile quiet. But I knew it was not over. The enemy had not been destroyed. They had only been delayed. Their retreat was not surrender but calculation. They had seen something they did not expect, and they would return with more, stronger, fiercer, relentless. The princess shifted in my arms, her silver eyes flickering open. She looked at me, then at the men around us, and though her lips did not move, I understood. This was why she had come, not to find shelter in stone walls, not to be hidden behind gates and spears. She had come to us because we were different, because in the face of fear, we could still rise. I thought of the guards frozen when she first arrived, their weapons heavy in their hands. And then I looked at them now bleeding, battered, but standing tall beside her, even the youngest soldier, his eyes wide with terror only hours before, now held his sword with pride. Something had changed in all of us. Something had awakened. The captain placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low. "She has chosen you," he said, "and because of her, we have chosen to. We will not turn her away." I nodded, though the weight of it pressed heavily on me. Protecting her meant protecting more than a child. It meant standing against an enemy that had already destroyed worlds. It meant becoming the shield for something greater than our own lives. The princess closed her eyes again, drifting into exhausted sleep. Her glow dimmed to a faint shimmer, but it was enough to light the darkness around us. I held her tighter, my resolve hardening. The men began to rebuild what little they could. Fallen stones were lifted, fires put out, the dead carried with quiet hands. The fortress bore its scars, but it still stood, and so did we. Above, the stars broke through the smoke, shining brighter than before. The night was almost over. Dawn would come soon. I looked out across the valley where shadows lingered, where the ships had vanished into the clouds. I knew this was only the beginning. They would come again. They would not stop until she was gone, until every spark of her world was erased. But they had made a mistake. They had thought humanity would break, as her people had. They had thought we would fall to fear, as soldiers had fallen before. They had thought we would surrender. They were wrong. With her at our side, we would fight. With her light in our hands, we would stand. And no matter how many times they came, no matter how strong they were, we would not yield. The small alien princess had taken shelter with me. She had given us her trust, her strength, her fire. And in return, we had given her something her enemy had never faced before. The night ended with silence, but not peace. It ended with a promise that humanity would not bow, that, as long as she was here, as long as we breathed, no force in the universe would break us. And when the enemy returned, as I knew they would not find prey. They would find us waiting,